So tonight's webinar is Securing Strong College Letters of Recommendation, Insider Secrets from College Admissions Counselors. So before we get going, we'll do little introductions. We'll be discussing understanding what recommendation letters actually are, identifying potential recommenders, brag sheets, how do you ask for recommendations, and just overall tips, followed by a Q&A. So in terms of timelines, ladies and gentlemen, what we're looking at is about 45 minutes to an hour for the presentation. We'll leave some room at the end for question and answers because, as we all know, there's always questions. This webinar is recorded and you will receive a recording in your inbox within the next couple of days. We encourage you to rewatch this webinar, share it with your network, your peers, if you're a parent, fellow parents. Yes, this is recorded, absolutely. We encourage you to reshare this as many times as you like, of course. Yes, and we'll be here to answer any of your questions as well. So, introductions. If you don't know us already, we're Quad Education. It goes without saying, low college acceptance rates and fierce competition within the space are making it a little bit harder to get into the country's top schools. It's no easy task whatsoever. So while GPAs and test scores can lay the foundation for a stronger college applications, I should say, it takes more than statistics to show up at the top of colleges. And it takes a lot more than that to show them why you're an excellent candidate. That's where Quad Education comes in. Our college admissions programs are built to maximize your chances of college acceptances. Our team of 150 plus experts, including the two gentlemen you see on your screens, have a long-standing track record of getting students accepted at top colleges. Every college counselor we work with specializes in strategic positioning to show admissions committees all across the country why you'd make a stellar addition to any sort of incoming class, whether it's next year or beyond. We always begin by learning a little bit more about you. So your background, your family, your college preferences, passions, and so much more. Learning about you helps us personalize your college admissions counseling experience and helps us build a compelling application persona to share with your top schools, whatever those may be. So we start by supporting students as young as the 6th grade. Can you believe that, 6th grade? To ensure that they're building a competitive and standout profile right from the get-go, and supporting students across the entire application lifecycle, from school selection and narrative building to interview prep, merit scholarships, applications, to a full application review panel, and so much more. The admissions counselors that are joining us here tonight on the webinar are part of our expansive team of experts that support our students in reaching their goals and attending their top school, their dream school. So if you're interested in exploring your options around one-on-one college admissions counseling, we want to let you know that you will receive an email, like I stated, after this webinar. It'll include a link to schedule a free consultation with one of our admissions counseling specialists. So if by chance we can't get to your questions in the Q&A, we encourage you to take that opportunity, book a free call, and we'll be there to support you. But obviously, you're not here to hear me speak for the rest of the evening. I'm going to pass it off to our wonderful panelists who will then introduce themselves and take it from here. Jesse, go first.
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Jesse. I graduated from Emory University, magna cum laude, and went on to go to the University of Southern California to complete my JD MBA. I've been an essay writing coach for admissions for both undergrad and grad school for about 8 years now. And I've helped a lot of people sort of sculpt their whole overall application and make sure that everything is at the top of the quality that people are looking for. So I'm really excited to be here.
All right. Thank you, Jesse. So my name is Dr. Nick Crocco. I'm coming to you from lovely Houston, Texas. And I was an admissions officer at both the University of Pennsylvania within the Ivy League and Vanderbilt University, my alma mater, as well as I have my master's from Vanderbilt in higher education administration, fancy way of saying how colleges work, college counseling certificate from UCLA, and I have a doctorate from the University of Houston right here in lovely Houston. Also faculty for adult learners at Rice University. So I've worked on both sides of the desk, as they say, both as the admissions officer, but also in several distinct high school communities across the United States as director of college counseling. So I've worked with many layers of recommendation. I've read them myself. I've wrote them myself, and I've trained faculty to do it. So hopefully we'll give you some insight as to kind of what they are and what they aren't tonight. So let's look at our first slide. So what exactly are recommendation letters and why are they so important? So one of the things that's going to happen in committee is when I would go present a student from my territory and say, hey, this is Jesse. He's wonderful. He just graduated from Emory, or I guess he'd be graduating from high school. Maybe he wants to come to Emory. When I'd be talking about all those things, the dean is always going to ask, what are faculty saying about them in the classroom and the school community? So is this a student where they may not talk all that often, but when they do, everyone wants to be their lab partner, or everyone listens to what they say, or maybe they can explain a concept when the teacher can't. We've had those situations as well. We're going to give you some tips and insights to how to get kind of the best out of them, but basically what they're looking for, the admissions committee, I should say, is kind of what is this student like as a student? What are they like in an academic environment, and what might they be like on our campus?
All right, so how can the letter of recommendation influence admissions decisions? So they're integral to the overall evaluation process. This is just definitely one of the most important factors of the application, because it's getting to know, like Nick said, a more in-depth view of you in terms of how you interact with people in the classroom, how the people in terms of the students and the faculty perceive you, and it gives sort of like that additional personal element to the application, so that you're not just like a number or a statistic. They provide perspectives from individuals, and the strongest ones are going to be the ones that show sort of like the detailed accounts of why you stood out in particular. And again, this is like something that is really important, because in addition to obviously like your GPA and your test scores, you also, and your personal statement, these are letters that are separate and to a degree definitely less biased from the other elements of your application, such as your personal statement, for example, because it's coming from someone else, and you're not allowed to see exactly what they write. So it's really important to find people that really know you personally and who can really vouch for you.
Okay, so basically they're going to get what we call objective data. So that's going to be transcript curriculum within the context of your high school. So you really can't compare yourself to a student from a different high school, even if it's right down the block, unless you're in the exact same school district. That can sometimes happen. But even then, they look at you within the context of your high school. So they're going to get that data, both your grade performance and what you took. Test scores can be required or not, or submitted or not, depending on the institution. It's very much up in the air right now. There's no one size fits all. So they're going to get all that data. But now they want to know who you are behind the numbers, behind the transcript. So this is when those letters of recommendation can help. Teachers can speak to different ways that you learn, different assignments you presented, and we're going to talk about how to get them to include those in their letter. But basically, they're trying to figure out what you would be like on their campus and how you approach learning. And one thing I say, this goes with the essays too, but since we're on rec letters, I think it also applies. Deans of admission like curiosity. They are less fond of certainty. So if you say, hey, I'm really, I know this already, or I really believe this, but I'm open to learning more, or I know there could be different points of view. Like those can be great things that they're looking for. And teachers can often speak to that. What I often would tell faculty is I would say, look, they want to hear anecdotes and stories, so they want to hear like what exactly, Jesse did in the chemistry lab, like they're looking for that sort of thing. So this is basically why they have them. They're looking for ways to kind of get those, as my dean used to say, compelling intangibles. So that's something that these letters can accomplish.
Definitely. Yeah. So common mistakes to avoid. Like Nick said, this is like a really important element because it's so specific to you, and it's supposed to be an additional personal element to the application, so you're not just a statistic. So generic or in-person letters are definitely a no-go. You don't want to ask someone who you never really interacted with as a teacher, or a teacher who doesn't really know you, and who maybe you got like a really, even if you got like a really good grade, if the teacher just like has no idea who you are, they'll just be like, you know, he checked all the boxes. Like that's going to be generic. Lack of alignment with application narrative, definitely, like the theme of the application as a whole, as I like to say, especially, you know, in both the context of undergrad and law school, but in terms of the narrative, you need to make sure that this is like something that aligns with your mission and your interests and your academic goals. You can't, you can be interested in everything. Like you can be curious. That's definitely a good characteristic to have. But I would say that you want to also have a sense of direction and point to, you know, what kind of, you know, area of study you want to kind of take a deeper dive into, while also being open to other options, but making sure that the application, the letter of recommendation you get from a teacher is one from a subject that you're very interested in pursuing, as you know, perhaps a major later on. Late submissions or missing letters, definitely a no-go. You need to make sure that you get things in on time, and things take a lot of time to process. From my understanding of the Common Application, it's better early than late, and follow up with teachers, because everyone's getting a recommendation letter from someone, so it's really important that you keep on top of them, because they may forget. And failure to provide necessary information or guidance, which is another really important factor. Like if you need to refresh, like perhaps meet with them or jot down some bullet points of like aspects of the class that you found interesting and that you recall performing well in, so that they can like refresh the recollection of who you are as a student. So those are the things that you want to make sure to avoid and to really key in on.
Yeah, and I'll just say a couple of quick things here. So with the late letters, like one thing I have my rising seniors do, so like the students I'm working with at Quad, what we're doing is we're actually thinking about letters of recommendation. You ask for them prior to the summer, so that way it gives teacher plenty of room. I will say that the vast majority of colleges and universities are not, I've never had a student, you know, not get admitted because a rec letter was like a day late or something. And oftentimes the deadline refers to your application as opposed to the letters, but still you want to get that stuff in, because there are places that do care about it tremendously. The other thing I'll tell you, we'll talk more about this later, but if you tell a teacher what to kind of write about or what you want them to focus on, they're not going to be upset at all. As someone who's had to write like 50 a year sometimes, like we'd love to see like what you want us to focus on. I got a quick question in the private chat, and then we'll go back to the presentation. But why are we not allowed to see the letters of recommendation? Several fold. The universities and colleges will respect it more and trust it more if you said, no, I believe them to say something. But also, like, if we showed every family, every letter we wrote, it would be like, well, you didn't talk about this, you didn't talk about this, you didn't talk about this. So that just avoids all that. I can tell you with absolute confidence that the vast majority, I mean, I've read literally 25,000 letters of recommendation. I'm not kidding. I mean, the more, when I think about it, if I had like 8,000 applications, each had 3 letters, but all that to say, they very rarely, I can count maybe 3 times when they said anything bad. What we often would say in my office is, we write about you on your best day. So anyway, all that to say, like, those are just some context, but here's an example of what they kind of look like. So you can see right here that they're telling them where they worked with them, and, you know, just kind of giving the context. Now, so here's the thing. So she's giving, like, you know, lots of qualities here. Jane is passionate about storytelling and creativity. At the same time, she's very organized. So
Nick, your audio.
Yeah.
Nick, your audio. Jesse, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
I can take it from here while he fixes it. So I'll just read it aloud for us. To whom it may concern, I'm writing this letter of recommendation for Jamie Smith, who is applying to Yale University's English Literature program. Jamie worked as a journalism intern with us at the Toronto Star, and as her supervisor, I was consistently impressed by her dedication to detail and her outstanding writing abilities. She's an excellent communicator and researcher and works well with others to produce error-free content. Jamie is passionate about storytelling and creativity. At the same time, she's very organized and has a logical and analytical mind that assists her greatly in writing and in her writing endeavors. She would make an excellent addition to the community at Yale University. Please feel free to contact me should you require any additional information. Thank you for your time. So this is like a really positive, glowing letter of recommendation. I think Nick can opine as to the average length of these letters, but I think that it's certainly it touches upon the themes of this is a specific area, definitely, and it touches upon the fact that she has direction and also the curiosity factors there. So I think this is a positive example. Should we keep going?
Yeah, we can keep going.
There you go.
Okay.
Yep. I'm sorry about that. I don't know what happened. Cursor's down here. I have no idea. But let's keep going.
Sounds good. Do you want to take this one, Nick?
Sure.
All right. Here we go.
So who to ask? So I will tell you, when I was working in the high school, students would come to me and they would say, who do I ask? And that kind of thing. And I'd say, what do you want to study? So they're not that super strict about this, but if a student is going for engineering and there's no math and science, that's going to sound like it's really kind of weird, right? So anyway, I would always say junior teachers are preferable. Sometimes there's a caveat to this, it could be 10th grade to 12th grade. And if they taught you in 10th grade and in 12th grade, that could work. Or if they wore a different hat. So in other words, it was I've had them as my homeroom advisor since 9th grade. And then when I go to 12th grade, now they're going to be my teacher, and they've known me for 4 years. So that could work out well. I will say I have had at least one student every year when I worked on the high school side who would say, you don't understand. My 7th grade teacher is my second mom. And I go, they don't want to hear from your second mom. They really want to hear from high school teachers, preferably 11th grade, just because it's a full year of instructions. So what I tell juniors every year, even if we're not to the college list yet, we're not to the essays and whatnot, you still want to kind of create that rapport so that they know you when it comes time to ask them later. So, yeah.
Someone said, what about your 11th grade teacher from your previous school?
Yeah, so this happens sometimes. I have a student right now I'm working with, and one of her favorite teachers is going to a different school. It's okay if they write from there and say, hey, I taught this student during that time. That can work too. For transfer students, if you're actually transferring from one college or university to another, that would be your professors, not your actual high school teachers. So
we see a ton of questions coming in. These are fantastic. I think we should save them for the end, and we'll just go over them. And some of these questions actually might actually be answered during the webinar, which is awesome.
Yeah, I agree. Sounds great. We good to move on to the next one?
We good to move on, gentlemen?
Yeah.
Fantastic.
All right. Brag sheets. So what are brag sheets and why are they important? They're documents where you list in detail your achievements. So this is what Nick and I mentioned previously a little bit, which is you want to refresh the teacher's recollection of who you are, because at this point, at this juncture, you're a senior, and if likely you're asking your junior teacher for the recommendation, or and this is especially important if you're asking a sophomore teacher of yours to write the recommendation, because it's going to be over a year removed, to list what you've done, what your experiences, your skills and qualities, make sure that they align with your overall theme of your application as to, what you're interested in pursuing and what kind of qualities that kind of area of expertise or study would, require. Again, like the curiosity aspect is really important as a general rule, because of, as Nick mentioned, that's something that college campuses want more of in terms of the personality aspect. And you want to provide a comprehensive overview of your capabilities, that it's not, the resume is its own separate kind of entity, and I think it should be treated as such. And the rest of your application should never be like a laundry list of what you have on your resume, because why would I want to read your resume twice? This is a brag sheet is something that encapsulates the elements of the specific things that you did in that class with that teacher, what assignments that were particularly engaging with for you, bringing in anecdotes, thinking of the things that you achieved, how you did well in the class, and how you overcame obstacles in the class as well. If there were specific moments that kind of like really captured your attention or your teacher's attention, that's something definitely to highlight. So yeah, they're definitely very valuable to painting the whole picture of who you are, beyond anything from your resume or your stats. Specific format, I think we can touch on that as we keep going.
All right. So here's the thing. What you want to do is give the teacher anecdotes and things that you really liked about their class. So sometimes this is called a brag sheet. We used to call it at the high schools I worked at, very cleverly, creatively titled teacher recommendation form, which sounds like just a document you fill out, which basically is. But I asked, but anyway, I asked my faculty, I said, what sort of questions do you want, answered? Like, what sort of things would help you? And I remember one teacher said, she's like, why'd you pick me? Like, of all the teachers, why me? And what I would also say to students is be specific on these. Don't say, if you're asking like a math teacher, don't say, I love math because I like to solve problems. Right. But that's kind of what math is. Yes. But like, what about math? Like the applications of math, the Fibonacci sequence blows my mind, or I've also had a lot of times where students will say, I want to do this because it's interesting, and I really want to share it because it's interesting. But why is it interesting? Like, why do you like it? Like, what's next? Like, what are those things that you really got out of? I've also had faculty have told me they were really touched because a student might say, oh my goodness, I just got this wonderful brag sheet or teacher rec form from your student, and they told me that this one lecture I gave, which I thought was really boring, wasn't on my best day, was like the most inspiring thing she's ever seen before. So those are really like cool kind of moments here. But basically, what you wanted, but I also tell the faculty, don't just rehash their resume, kind of like as Jesse was saying, like, I've already read that stuff. I don't need a teacher to tell me, like, Jesse's president of a student body. Right, he told me on his resume, like, or his Common App. But I would rather hear, as president of the student body, he organized the best of the whatever it is, So you're looking for those moments of trying to get a feel for what they're like on there. And so, yeah, that's just kind of like the main thing. I would say the biggest piece of advice, and I tell students, be specific. Don't write, oh, your class is so interesting. Why is it interesting? What is of interest to you? What makes you want to do something else next? So,
yeah, I agree. Okay, so this answers the question of the person who asked the format of it. So, I would say in addition to this, as Nick was saying, dive deep into one or two particular anecdotal experiences. And correct me if I'm wrong, if that's sort of off track, but I think it's important also, as you were saying, to dive deep into the specific moments in the course, interactions with your teachers that kind of highlight why the class stood out to you and why you think you performed well and why it is sort of like serves as a milestone for how far you've come in terms of the academic your academic career and how it can sort of expand upon your horizons as you progress as a college student, and the direction that you want to go in whatever area of study that you're pursuing. So I think the specificity part is crucial.
So I'd love to add in, I know there's a couple people in here sort of asking about these brag sheets. If you're looking for like a more in-depth brag sheet or like a template that you could use, I'm going to drop my email in the chat. Please feel free to email myself and one of our quad counselors. We'll see if we can get a template created, because I think this is a really good thing to have, and we want to make sure that we have as many resources as possible for our audience and just, you know, for our network. So I will drop that in the chat, and if you'd like a copy, please email me. Sorry, gentlemen, I'll let you keep going.
Right. No problem.
Okay, how to ask for recommendations. So there's a couple of ways here, and I'll tell you what I would train my students to do is I would say, okay, the procedure I would use as director of college counseling in the high schools was I would say, all right, we used to have like a primary counselor. So everyone, like, it might be like, I might have a student on my caseload, but Jesse might have a student on his caseload, and that's okay. But I say you can ask any college counselor or your primary counselor, like that's fine too. And basically, like I would say, okay, so who are you thinking about asking? And they would say, teacher A, teacher B. Okay, tell me about teacher A and teacher B. Well, I want to go into engineering, and teacher A taught me math, and teacher B taught me science. And in what year? 11th grade. Done. That's it. But then sometimes you have the nuanced ones where it's like, well, can I, as I was saying earlier, can I ask my 8th grade teacher? No. They want high school teachers, preferably from junior year. You're going to look really, really wacky if they do that. They want to know who you are as a student. It's not a hard and fast rule about junior year, but again, full year of academic instruction, you're the most, I use this word somewhat speciously, but mature at that point, you know, to get it. So anyway, so once I've said, okay, teacher A, teacher B, awesome, great. Then what I would say is find a time to meet with them after class. You know, like you don't want to do it in front of everybody, like, or you could do it in the morning, you can do it at lunch, free period, study hall, like whatever works for you. Find a time to just talk to them and just say, and I'll tell you, like my heart was pounding out of my chest when I did this in high school. So I like totally sympathize. Like, oh my God, are they going to say yes? Like, what are they going to write? It's not a report card. Again, it's basically talking about you on your best day. Very rarely, and I mean like 1 out of like 1,000 times, like a teacher will say, I think you might be better asking somebody else, which is, yeah, you know, wink, wink, like that. It's just not going to happen. You know, so that's no big deal. Again, very rare. But so then you ask them and say, hey, you know, as you know, I'll be applying to college next year. I was hoping you could support my application. Now, I would have you ask for this before school gets out, whether that's April, May, or June, like before the summer for you rising seniors. So if you're a junior right now, this is something I would have you do in the next month or two. That way, as a teacher, I know if I want to write for the student, I can do it in the summer. I can do it in early fall. But I tell all my faculty, I say, presume every student has an early November 1 deadline. But that way they get it. And oftentimes I'd have internal deadlines. Also for me as a counselor, because I had to write my own letters. Anyway, once that's done, then you would submit the teacher recommendation form to them, and then they would write the letter. And usually in most offices, it'll just be, there's some internal procedure where the high school will send those letters out. But basically that's what I would do. You want to have the same 2 teachers for every college. If you're applying to a selective place, chances are you'll get a counselor letter automatically from your in-house counselor, but also 2 letters of recommendation from academic teachers, just as I kind of discussed. You don't want to have, well, I want these teachers for this school and these teachers for that. That's not really how it works. It's basically the same 2 letters of that. Also, the other thing I'd say real quick is when you get decisions, tell your faculty who wrote for you, write them a thank you note, maybe a little Starbucks gift card, or make them some cookies or something, you know, like just like a thank you, you know, that they would really appreciate that. I am surprised sometimes how often students like don't think to tell me as the counselor or the faculty. I had a student one time, I remember the word on the street was from his other counselor that he got into like his top choice. And we were really excited about that. And I went up to him and I said, Matthew. And he went, yeah. And I said, Matthew, any news? He said, oh yeah, I got in. Like, great. That was a week ago. Cool. Like, it was funny because he apparently, when he got the news, he went up into his room and like shut the door, and his parents thought he didn't get in. And then they're like, are you okay? He's like, yeah, I got in. Anyway, tell your teachers, tell your counselor, tell your faculty, and your parents.
Right. So, example of how to request a letter of recommendation. This is a template email. I think.
Yeah, just real quick.
Yeah.
I gave you the in-person thing, but this might be if you can't get a hold of them or it's during the summer. So sorry about that. Yeah.
I agree. I think in person is probably always the better move. But obviously, when they're available or scheduling a time to speak with them would be best. And then a follow-up email that includes elements of this, I think, would be great as well. But if you really can't meet with them in person, then this is a great template to use as well. But I think that personal aspect, this is such a personal element to your application that you want to speak directly to them if possible. I think that would be best.
Yeah, and with this one too, like, just put in stories. I really like this lesson. I really like this assignment. I really like when you taught me this. I never thought about that. Like, yeah, that's exactly it.
And would you say, Nick, that it's important to like kind of when you give the anecdotes, maybe just choose like one or two and go deeper into them as opposed to like a ton of different anecdotes?
Yeah, I think 2 to 4 is fine. It can be as simple as like, that one time with that we lost the debate, but like, if I had a friend who was working on a debate team or something, we lost the championship, but afterward you really reassured me, or I never thought about this author and you introduced him to me, or the science concept. That's really cool. So
yes, I agree. I think the stories about resilience and grit are sometimes frequently more compelling than stories that were like, oh, you won. Like, that's awesome. I mean, sometimes those are great stories as well, but I think that you don't want to overlook sometimes the stories where you didn't necessarily get what you wanted, but you learned so much more from it, from that adversity.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I've seen like sometimes students are really worried, like, does it have to be the teacher who got the A in the class in? Like, no, not necessarily. Like sometimes the class you suffered in and, struggled in, that tells a lot of story. I mean, I remember, I've had students who like really struggled in the course, and then the teacher really worked with them. And then like I've seen like stuff to the effect of, the student I had in September is totally more like, the student I have now is totally different than the student I had in September in like the best ways possible. Mm-hmm. Like the growth that they've shown towards the discipline and learning and like understanding what it is, like that really can go a long way.
Yeah. I love that.
Yeah. Okay. So, as we were talking about, like, you want to make sure that you can tell it's okay if you don't know what you want to do. I think there's tremendous pressure on families and especially the students to like know where they want to go and what they want to do. But you can just talk about generally what you're thinking of. So I often tell students, like, if you're not sure exactly your path, which is totally fine. What are you thinking about? What problems do you want to solve? Like, no matter what you believe or where you live, if you look at the world, there's stuff that could be better, and so what sort of things do you want to change? And there's lots and lots of answers to that. And also talk about, any sort of like personal struggles that you have. Sometimes they know about those. You don't have to share anything you're not comfortable with. But sometimes, like, I was well aware, like my homeroom students, especially, we're also in my college counseling caseload. Like, I know parents were going through a divorce. Like, that's kind of horrible. Like, anytime, but in high school when you're trying to do all this, like, yeah, that could affect things. But also, like, I've definitely found that the teachers who know you the best can also talk about like those interactions that you've had outside the classroom too, where you're just like, you may have done something at like a school assembly, or maybe you did something on the athletic field or performing arts stage. Or, I mean, I've seen like science teachers say, hey, his independent research on whatever is really groundbreaking and really kind of cool. And as a high school student, wow, he could do that. So And you can, and like oftentimes, like they don't. I'm often I'm a little hesitant sometimes about giving them like the resume alone, because then they just like repeat the resume. So with the brag sheet or a teacher recommendation form, that's where you can give those 2 to 4 things that they can plug in. And and again, as I said, because I would do the same, we'd get the same thing for counselors, and I'd be like, oh wait, he wants to talk about this? Great, awesome, in it goes, right? So this was his favorite experience. That's what they're looking for, is that data. They're not looking for you to confirm that you're really keen on whatever discipline. They want to know why you're keen on it.
Yeah, I think we covered these pretty thoroughly. Any other points? Oh.
Yeah, so I mean, it's a lot of what we've already said. Like just, I think specificity is the key. I mean, a lot of the advice I give the faculty in writing letters of recommendation is exactly what I tell students about the essays: show, don't tell.
Yeah.
So don't say like, Timmy is so nice. How is he nice? What makes him nice? What did he do that was nice? Because like I can't, as an admissions officer, right? His teachers report that he's nice, and the dean's going to go, well, okay then. Like, so you want you want a little bit of entertainment to it. By entertainment, I often say like a story that's more than just he's awesome, great. And there was a comment earlier about the example we showed. Yeah, that wasn't very specific. I also wouldn't make it specific to a specific school, because I'm going to send that rec letter everywhere. So I had a wonderful faculty member, very nice guy, wonderful history teacher. But whenever a student applied to his alma mater, he wanted to put in that he was an alum. And I'd say the problem was I'm saying that letter to every other school. And they're not expecting like a customized letter just for them. Like they want, it's very, I mean, I am hard pressed to think of a single student I've worked with who has sent like custom letters to every school. Like, I just don't think it's going to work.
I don't even know if that's possible. Is that possible? I think so.
That'd be a nightmare too.
Yeah, it's a Common App, so you have to submit it.
Correct. Yeah, it's a question that comes up sometimes, but like it's just that's just not how it works. Like you get a counselor letter, 2 teacher letters, off it goes. That's it.
And I will say also, just to your other point about figuring out the sort of theme and the goal and the questions you want to answer. When I applied for college, I remember talking about, science and how biology was super interesting to me and how I wanted to be a biology major. But after my first year of college, I decided I really wanted to do business and also learn about Chinese language and culture, which is what I ended up double majoring in and then going on to law school. So I kind of took a completely different path. So I don't think people should feel necessarily tethered to or pressured to like say, oh, this is what I'm going to do permanently and set in stone. And if I don't commit to this major now as a senior in high school for the next 4 years, like they're going to come for me. Like, make the theme align with what you're interested in this moment, and make it obviously based on honestly how you're feeling about a particular course of study or an area that you're passionate about, but don't feel like that's something that is immutable and like you can never change it ever again as you move forward. You're going to always learn and grow and understand new things as you progress in college, and that's part of the whole curiosity factor, which is why colleges want that. They want people who are have a certain direction. They know an idea, but they're open to new experiences. And I will also say that I think it's important that you're when you look for letters of recommendation, that you're also looking in the direction that is believable. Like, so for example, what Nick was saying about how, if you're super passionate about science, if that's like your goal and that's what you kind of talk about, but like literally all of your classes or all of your electives that are in history or like the arts, it's kind of like, there's a cognitive discrepancy between those two things. It's like, well, you're saying one thing, but the rest of your story tells something completely different. So make sure that it's in alignment. And honestly, like if you are really passionate about science, then I think naturally you would be taking more electives in that area in high school. But correct me if I'm wrong. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I mean, I had a student I worked with this last year, and he came to me as a senior, and he really wanted to go to Northwestern's journalism program, but he had done absolutely zero in journalism for like the entire time of high school. And he was a water polo player. And I said, okay, like you're applying to Northwestern journalism programs, one of the most tough in the country. And you're going up against newspaper editors and students who have written op-eds and sometimes novels and all sorts of stuff. YouTube channels where they do local news, school news, like that kind of thing. And he was like, well, maybe I'll write an article this fall. I'm like, but you're not understanding. It's like it's like someone wants to play water polo who's never played, and you've been playing for 10 years, and now you want to like step up. But I will say one thing that Jesse kind of hit upon. There is, and I'll just say this very directly. Like, I think a lot of families assume, like, okay, if the student majors in this, then they go to grad school for that too, and then they get a job in that, and that's just how it works. And that's just not the case really at all. We have a lot of students nationwide who want to be doctors, right? So they always go bio. But biology is one of the most oversubscribed majors pretty much everywhere. And med schools actually prefer when you were not a bio major. Yes. You take the pre-med requisites, and then exactly, right? So then
law schools too. They don't want everyone to be political science. They want business majors, language majors, arts majors. They want it all.
Absolutely. I mean, and what I say is like undergrad is I don't know what I want to do, but I would say undergrad's like I don't know what I do when I figure it out. Grad school signifies intent. Like you can't kind of want to get a JD. You kind of you can't kind of want to be a nurse, right? So, I mean, true story, like when I was at Vanderbilt, we have Peabody College of Education and Human Development right across the street. I was arts and science, history and anthropology major. And when I was a tour guide, parents would always go, what do you want to do with that? And I would just go law. I just started to say law. Jesse's right here too. But then I remember one day I was like, hey, I'm really kind of into this college admission stuff. Peabody's right there. Why don't I go get a master's and, do that and see if I become an admissions officer. And I remember I went over to Peabody and I could have taken an education class undergrad at Vanderbilt anytime I wanted. I didn't take one, never took one, never thought about it, never thought about working in colleges until, after college where I was like, this was kind of fun. But I remember I talked to the woman who works at the grad school and I said, hey, am I going to be at a disadvantage in the classroom or outside or in terms of admission because I don't have any education classes? And she said, Nick, 95% of your classmates haven't taken any education classes. So all I have to say, keep an open mind.
Yeah.
All right, what questions? We've answered a bunch in the chat, but it looks like there's
more. So I've been answering some of them privately. So somebody had asked about, let's just kind of scroll back to the top. So the questions about the brag sheet, I think we answered pretty thoroughly, unless you guys have something else to add. But the two questions that I thought were really interesting is we had two separate parents asking us about getting letters of recommendation from people who aren't teachers. So one of them is a sports coach, and then the other one is a dance teacher. And we'd love your thoughts on that.
So here's what I would say. Like with the extra letters of recommendation, most students don't have any, which is fine, and they still can get admitted. Like they're not looking for that. But if there is, but some students will have an extra letter or two. Please note, this is not me saying you should get an extra letter or two, but if it adds something different. So a coach or a dance teacher, if that's a big part of your application, I'd totally sign off on that and say like, that'd be great. What I do run into a fair amount is you get a question, something to the effect of, we know someone who's an alum or has a connection to the university, or they're like a famous celebrity or something, like, would that help? And the thing is, like, I go, do they know the actual student? And if the answer is no, but they have a connection, like, no, this is not, like, doesn't work that way. What you want to avoid is a rec letter that says, well, I don't know Jack. My friend says he's great. Like, well, okay then. I mean, so there, it's not like the admissions committee is going to be really, impressed with like someone who just has his perceived, title or whatnot. Now, of course, there are alums who really are like alums, and like that can help, but that's pretty rare. I also think that the fear of that and the anxiety about that is pretty overpronounced. Like that's not that many in the applicant pool at all. So all that to say, you want to have the person who knows you best, not necessarily the person who like is perceived to have the most appeal. So I had a student here in Houston who worked for Mayor Anise Parker a couple of years back, and he was like some sort of intern and doing some pretty serious, like cool stuff for the city actually. And he said, can I get a letter from Mayor Parker? And I said, well, does she know you well? And he says, no. And I said, okay, well, who knows you well in that office? And he said, her chief of staff. I said, well, he should write the letter then. So it's not about who's saying it, it's about what they're saying. So if there's an extra letter or two, that can help, and that can also be within the high school community as well. Like, hey, here's my soccer coach, that works, but it's not something required. And also I wouldn't push it. Like they don't want, like my personal record in my territory was 9 letters of recommendation, including one from mom with very positive things to say about her daughter. Like, well, if mom says, and so anyway, all that to say, like, I think an extra 1 or 2 can work, but work with your counselor or quad. And we can make suggestions. You don't necessarily need them, honestly.
I agree. And I guess to the specific question about whether you can ask one from a dance teacher, I think the other question would be, is your daughter or child trying to major in dance or the arts or something like that? And the relevance of it is important to consider. If they're trying to be a biology major, it's not really adding anything of substance. Yeah. And also, I don't know, Nick, what do you think about like tutors and stuff like that? Is that something that...
I wouldn't do a tutor. I mean, I've seen I've seen employers. Like I'll give you a great example. Like I had a student one time. She really wanted to do elementary education. She loved working with kids and all this stuff. And she had like a part-time job at a daycare during the summer, but during the school year, she babysat. And she came and she said, "Hey, Dr. A, can I ask, like the parents I babysit for like a list of like, 1 paragraph testimonials about like my babysitting, like her couple of families." And again, the plan is elementary ed. And I went, absolutely. Yeah. So that's cool. That is excellent. Like,
you're a lifeguard, YMCA, something. You could be a Starbucks barista. If it's a job, it's a job. Professionalism is important as well.
Yeah, and that's the thing is like, I always like I had a little bit of a bias where I always like students who work like retail or food jobs because I just thought it was a good character builder because like that's also what I did and we were always like told about that. But I loved when like the Smoothie King manager would be like, "Oh my God, she's the best employee and she does everything and she greets customers." I'm like, yeah, like I always thought that was kind of cool. So it can also be like, if you volunteer like in some sort of community center or if you choose to worship your house of worship, like that could work out really well too. There's so many options out there.
Any volunteer work as well. And just to clarify, this is for, in addition to the 2 academic certifications, this is like a supplemental 1 or 2.
Correct. And here's the thing, like some colleges are, here's a maddening answer to anything about the college process. It depends. The University of California system will not look at rec letters. And I remember I told a parent this once, and this was years ago, but it's been the case forever. And she said, "But can you call anyway?" And I said, "Okay, sure." So I called up UCLA and I said, "Hey, can we?" They said, "We do not look at them. We never look at them," that kind of thing. And they were pretty like, I'm like, they must get that question 20 times a day, at least, so all that to say, like the other thing as I tell students, like the record at Vanderbilt was 24 letters submitted. Penn at the time was 46. And then as a college counselor, I visit colleges, like the prospective student tours. So I was at the University of North Carolina, 87 letters of recommendation. And no, they did not get in. So if you have 1 or 2, sure. If you've got 20, no. So that's kind of how it plays out.
Awesome.
That's amazing.
Yes, absolutely. I want to be mindful of time. I see a ton of questions in here, and I apologize. It doesn't look like we're going to be able to get to them all tonight. But please feel free to drop us an email, book a consultation where we'll actually be able to, not we per se, but our team, someone on our team will be able to sit down with you and go through your specific questions. Because, for example, I see a parent in here asking a question about.
Oh yeah, that was the one I was looking at. So if your child is applying to humanity majors in a certain number of schools and then MD, BS majors in other schools, should we ask the same 2 letters of recommendation?
So questions like that, I highly recommend sitting down with one of our counselors, because there's so many nuances to that. But again, I want to be mindful of time. So I think we'll have to wrap it up for tonight. Nick, Jesse, thank you very much for being a part of this. Thank you for sharing your expert knowledge. And thank you to our wonderful audience for being so engaged and all the wonderful questions and commentary and engagement.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. I hope everyone has a wonderful evening.
All right. Thank you, everyone.
Good night. Take care.